Everyone in the small town knew of the little boy, but not for anything grand or heroic. He was just a normal child with messy hair, bright eyes, and an energy that seemed endless. He loved playing in the fields behind his house, climbing trees taller than any adult dared, and running faster than most of the neighborhood kids. But what no one realized was the strange and special talent he carried inside him, a talent that had begun to grow quietly in the corners of his small home. He spent hours drawing in his little notebook, doodling shapes that twisted and turned into patterns that seemed impossible. At first, it was just for fun, a way to pass the time when the rain kept him indoors or when his parents were busy with work. But the more he drew, the more he noticed something unusual. His creations seemed to have a life of their own. Lines that started shaky became bold and precise. Shapes that looked random suddenly formed pictures so clear and detailed that even adults could not believe a child of 8 could make them. It wasn't just about talent. It was something deeper, something he could not explain but felt with every stroke of his pencil. His parents noticed it, of course. They saw the way he would sit for hours without moving, his tongue peeking out of the corner of his mouth as he concentrated on the paper. They watched as he turned simple sketches into complex illustrations that looked almost like they belonged in a museum. They were proud, but they were also cautious. The world could be cruel to someone who was different, and they wanted to protect him. Yet they encouraged him quietly, giving him the tools he needed and praising his work, never pushing too hard. At school, things were different. Most children played with toys or argued over silly things, but he would sit quietly in class, filling the margins of his notebook with elaborate drawings. Sometimes the teacher would notice and call him over, curious about the tiny masterpieces he was creating. He would shyly explain, almost apologetically, that he was just drawing what he saw in his head. The teacher would nod, impressed, and tell him he was talented, though the other children often whispered and stared. They did not understand. To them, it was strange that someone so young could focus so much and create something so extraordinary. One day, a flyer arrived in the mail. It was colorful, with bold letters announcing a local talent competition for children. There would be singing, dancing, painting, and other creative displays. The grand prize was something every child dreamed of, a scholarship and a chance to showcase their talent in front of an audience. When he saw the flyer, his eyes lit up. He wanted to enter, but he knew everyone would think it was impossible. An 8-year-old could not compete with older children, seasoned performers, and trained artists. The idea seemed too big, too far out of reach. But there was something in his heart that would not let him ignore it. He kept the flyer close to his chest, staring at it late into the night, imagining himself standing on the stage, drawing while the audience watched in awe. The thought alone made him smile, and a strange courage began to grow inside him. He did not speak of it to anyone at first. Not his friends, not his teachers, not even his parents. It was a secret, a small flame of hope he wanted to nurture before revealing it to the world. The next morning, he woke up early, grabbed his notebook, and started planning. He sketched ideas and tried new techniques, testing what would work best under the pressure of being watched by so many people. He made mistakes, of course. Pages were filled with erased lines, smudges, and failed attempts. But he did not give up. Each failure was a lesson, and with each lesson his confidence grew. The more he practiced, the more he realized that the impossible might not be so impossible after all. His parents began to notice the change. Their quiet support became more visible. They would sit beside him, offering advice, helping him mix colors for his drawings, and even finding materials that made his work shine. They never pushed him to compete. They only asked if he wanted to try. And when he nodded eagerly, they helped him register for the competition. Even then, they could not hide their nervousness. They knew how hard it would be for him to face judges and a crowd, but they trusted him and wanted him to believe in himself. At school, his friends were curious. They asked why he spent so much time drawing instead of playing outside or joining in games. He simply smiled and said he had something important to do. Some of them laughed, not understanding, while a few quietly admired him. He did not mind. He was focused, and the thought of standing on that stage gave him more excitement than any game ever could. The week before the competition, he practiced more than ever. Every free moment was spent with his pencil in hand, perfecting his technique, imagining the judges' reactions, and picturing the applause he hoped to hear. Sometimes he would sit in silence, staring at his work, doubting himself, wondering if anyone would actually be impressed. But then he would look at the drawings he had already completed and realize how far he had come. Each line told a story, each sketch was a small victory, and he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he could do it. His parents helped him prepare mentally as well. They reminded him that it was not about winning, but about trying and showing the world what he could do. They told him that courage was more important than skill, that determination mattered more than perfection. These words stayed with him, calming his nerves and giving him strength. He went to bed each night dreaming not just of the competition, but of proving to himself that he could face something that seemed impossible and succeed. Finally, the day before the competition arrived. The house was quiet, filled only with the sound of pencils scratching on paper as he made final touches to his sketches. He packed his materials carefully, double-checked every page, and even practiced a few times in front of the mirror. He imagined the bright lights, the judges' faces, the crowd of people watching silently as he worked. It was overwhelming, but instead of fear, he felt excitement. This was his chance, his moment to step into something bigger than himself. That night, he went to sleep with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. He dreamed of standing on the stage, pencil in hand, drawing with a speed and precision that amazed everyone. He imagined the applause, the smiles, and the look of surprise on the judges' faces. Deep inside, he knew it would not be easy, that there would be challenges, that others would doubt him. But he also knew that he had prepared, that he had worked hard, and that he was ready to show the world what an 8-year-old could do when no one believed it was possible. The morning of the competition brought a mix of excitement and nerves that the little boy could feel in every part of his body. He woke up early, as usual, but today he could not stop thinking about the event. He quietly got dressed, careful not to wake his parents, though they were already stirring, sensing that today would be different. The house was unusually calm, with only the soft sound of breakfast being prepared and the rustle of papers as he checked his notebook one last time. He sat at the small kitchen table, pencil in hand, running over his sketches and ideas, imagining himself standing on the stage. Each drawing he looked at reminded him of the work he had put in. The hours spent perfecting lines, the mistakes he had learned from, the countless evenings of quiet practice. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from anticipation. The impossible, the unbelievable was about to be tested, and he could feel it in every fiber of his being. His parents watched him quietly, proud and slightly nervous. They had seen him grow from a curious child into someone who had an extraordinary focus and dedication for his age. They encouraged him softly, reminding him to breathe, to stay calm, and to enjoy the experience, even if he did not win. They knew it would be a challenge, and that others might underestimate him because of his age. But they also knew how capable he was, how determined, and how much he had prepared. Once breakfast was done, they packed their car and headed toward the venue. The streets were busier than usual, filled with people going about their day and others heading to the same competition. The child looked out the window, noticing the colors of the city, the small shops, and the pedestrians walking by. Everything seemed bigger today, somehow as if the world was slightly altered, just for him. He clutched his bag tightly, filled with pencils, sketch pads, and other materials. He had spent days preparing, making sure everything was perfect. At the venue, the air was electric with excitement. Children of all ages ran around, practicing, laughing, and occasionally crying. Parents whispered to each other, giving last-minute instructions, while volunteers moved quickly to organize the competition spaces. The boy's heart raced as he took in the sights and sounds, the voices blending together in a constant hum of energy. It was overwhelming but also thrilling. This was what he had been waiting for. This was his chance. He found the space where he would perform. The stage was small but brightly lit, with tables set up for materials and chairs arranged for the judges. The crowd of spectators was beginning to settle, and the murmurs of excitement grew louder. Other children practiced nearby, showing off their skills in small bursts, their laughter and chatter filling the room. Some of them looked at him curiously, a small boy among older and seemingly more experienced participants. He felt their eyes, but he did not let it bother him. He had come to do what he loved, and he was ready. The organizers called him over, confirming his spot and showing him the rules. He listened carefully, nodding as he repeated instructions in his head. He wanted to be perfect, but more importantly, he wanted to be ready. Every step he had taken in preparation led to this moment, and he would not let nerves shake him. He felt a mixture of excitement and pressure, a strange combination that made him more alert and aware than ever. During the waiting period, he found a quiet corner and opened his notebook, sketching lightly. He drew the stage in his mind, the judges' faces, and even the audience sitting quietly, watching. It was a form of practice, a mental rehearsal that helped calm his racing thoughts. His hands moved almost automatically, as if they knew the lines and shapes without needing to think. The sketches were small and careful, simple practice for the larger performance he was about to give. Around him, other children were practicing too, but many were loud and boastful. They talked about how easy it would be to win, how they had done this many times before. The little boy ignored them, focusing instead on his own work. He remembered what his parents had told him. Courage was more important than skill, and determination mattered more than perfection. He believed those words and let them guide him, giving him confidence in himself. As the time for his performance approached, he was called to the stage. The walk from the waiting area felt longer than it should have, every step echoing in his ears. The lights were bright, and he could see the audience, a blur of faces looking at him. The judges sat straight and serious, pens ready, waiting for the moment he began. He felt a flicker of nerves, a tiny wave of fear that he quickly pushed away. He was ready. He had practiced, he had prepared, and he had worked harder than anyone could imagine. He would do this. He set up his materials carefully, laying out his pencils and sketch pads. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment, picturing his work, imagining each line forming perfectly. Then he opened his eyes and began. The pencil moved across the paper, light at first, then bolder, forming shapes that seemed almost magical. The audience leaned in, curious, watching the small boy create something extraordinary before their eyes. His hands moved with speed and precision, every stroke intentional, every line full of confidence. Time seemed to blur as he worked. He felt focused, calm, and in control. The world outside the paper disappeared. There were only him, the pencil, and the creation forming on the page. Occasionally, he would glance at the judges, noting their expressions. At first, they seemed skeptical, unsure if what they were seeing could be real. But as the drawing took shape, their eyes widened in surprise, a spark of admiration appearing. Even the audience was silent, captivated by the little boy whose talent seemed far beyond his years. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than it should have. The child did not notice, completely absorbed in his work. He had planned every step but allowed room for spontaneity, letting his instincts guide the pencil. Mistakes were corrected quickly, and moments of brilliance shone through, catching the light and drawing the attention of everyone in the room. It was a performance, yes, but also a creation, a testament to years of quiet dedication and practice. When he finally finished, he set the pencil down and took a step back. The drawing was complete, more beautiful and detailed than anyone could have expected from someone his age. The room was silent for a moment, the kind of silence that carries shock and awe. Then the murmurs began, growing louder, turning into gasps and whispers. The judges leaned closer, inspecting the work with growing astonishment. The audience, too, began to react, their initial skepticism replaced by admiration. The impossible, the unbelievable had just happened before their eyes. The little boy smiled quietly, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. He had done what he set out to do. He had faced the challenge, worked hard, and created something extraordinary. Even if he did not win, he knew that he had achieved something remarkable, something that would stay with him forever. He glanced at his parents in the audience, who were smiling, tears in their eyes, pride shining on every line of their faces. They had always believed in him, and now the world could see what they had known all along. As he stepped away from the stage, other participants approached him, some curious, some in awe. They asked questions about how he did it, how long he had practiced, and where he had learned such skill. He answered politely, simply, without boasting. He was proud, yes, but humble. He knew that talent was only part of the story. Hard work, determination, and courage made the rest. And as he returned to his seat, he realized that the journey was just beginning. The road ahead was full of possibilities, and this was only the first step in a life that would continue to amaze those around him. The moment the little boy stepped onto the stage, a wave of nervous energy washed over him. The bright lights made everything seem larger than life. The audience sat in rows, eyes fixed on him, waiting to see what this young child could do. He took a deep breath, feeling the coolness of his pencils and the texture of his sketchpad in his hands. Everything he had practiced, every hour of dedication, every mistake that taught him a lesson had led to this moment. The judges, stern and composed, watched quietly. Some raised eyebrows, glancing at each other as if to confirm that the small boy standing before them could really perform what he promised. Other children had prepared speeches, dances, or musical performances, but he had only his hands, his imagination, and his notebook. The room was filled with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Could an 8-year-old really do something extraordinary on a stage full of experienced participants? He opened his sketchpad and placed it carefully on the table before him. The audience leaned forward slightly, some whispering among themselves. His parents sat in the front row, holding their breath, their eyes fixed on their child. He took another deep breath, steadying himself, and began. The pencil moved lightly at first, tracing the outline of a shape that slowly grew into something recognizable. The audience watched silently, unsure at first, but intrigued by the speed and confidence in his movements. Lines formed patterns that twisted and curved in ways no one expected. The pencil glided effortlessly, creating a rhythm that was almost musical. People started to notice the detail, the way each stroke built upon the last, forming a picture that seemed impossible for someone so young. The judges leaned in, their expressions changing from curiosity to astonishment. They had seen many participants in their careers, but rarely someone who combined precision, creativity, and speed at such a young age. The boy did not look up at the crowd or the judges. He was focused entirely on his work, feeling the pencil in his hand, imagining the shapes in his mind. His movements were confident, yet delicate, careful not to ruin the intricate lines that were forming. Occasionally, he paused for a moment to think, to let the image in his mind guide the next stroke. Each second passed like a heartbeat, a rhythm that only he could feel. The audience began to whisper quietly, a wave of awe spreading through the room. Some could hardly believe what they were seeing. Children who had been skeptical watched with wide eyes, amazed that someone their age could create something so advanced. Adults exchanged glances, nodding in approval, impressed by the talent and dedication on display. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of tension, excitement, and admiration. As he continued, the boy noticed small mistakes in his work. A line was slightly off, a curve not as smooth as it should be. For a moment, panic threatened to creep in, but he remembered the hours of practice, the lessons from every failure. He corrected it quickly, seamlessly integrating the fix into the design. This ability to stay calm under pressure amazed the audience even more. Here was a child who could face challenges, adapt, and continue without losing focus or confidence. The judges were no longer skeptical. They watched intently, whispering to each other, their pens moving as they noted details. The boy's skill was undeniable, his creativity unmatched. Each new stroke seemed to add life to the drawing, making it almost move on the page. The audience, too, began to show signs of admiration, leaning forward, holding their breath, caught in the spell of the performance. Time seemed to stretch and bend. Minutes passed, but to the boy it felt like hours and seconds all at once. He was in a zone, completely immersed in his work. The world outside the sketchpad disappeared. There were no judges, no audience, no bright lights. Only him and the creation forming under his hands. The feeling was intoxicating, a mix of focus and freedom, the kind of joy that comes only from doing something you truly love. Other participants had finished and stepped aside, some clapping politely, others whispering among themselves about the incredible display of talent. But the boy remained calm, continuing until the image in his mind was fully realized on the page. Every line, every curve, every detail was exactly as he had imagined. When he finally set the pencil down, he took a deep breath and looked at his work. The room fell silent for a moment, the kind of silence that carries shock and admiration. Then, slowly, murmurs spread through the audience. Gasps of amazement, whispers of disbelief, and quiet claps began to fill the room. The judges leaned in, examining the drawing more closely, their eyes wide with surprise. They had expected a good performance, perhaps a clever idea, but not this level of skill and detail. The child had stunned everyone, exceeding expectations in ways no one could have imagined. The boy stepped back slightly, a small smile on his face, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. He had done exactly what he set out to do. He had faced the impossible and transformed it into something real, something that amazed everyone in the room. His parents clapped enthusiastically, their smiles bright, tears of pride glimmering in their eyes. They knew that this moment would stay with him forever, a memory of courage, determination, and talent coming together in perfect harmony. As he walked off the stage, other children approached, some with curiosity, others with awe. They asked how he did it, how he learned to draw so well, and how he stayed so calm. He answered politely, simply, without boasting. He knew that the real victory was not in impressing others, but in proving to himself that he could achieve something that seemed impossible. The judges huddled together, whispering and making notes. They had seen many talented participants, but rarely had one left such a strong impression. They discussed the performance, the precision, the creativity, and the ability to remain focused under pressure. Their expressions were serious but impressed, acknowledging the extraordinary talent displayed by someone so young. Back in the audience, parents and spectators were still talking in hushed tones, trying to process what they had just witnessed. The impossible had been made possible, and it had been done by an 8-year-old boy with determination, skill, and a passion for what he loved. The atmosphere was filled with admiration, excitement, and a sense of wonder. Everyone realized that this child was not just talented, but also brave, disciplined, and remarkable. The boy returned to his seat, feeling a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. His heart was still racing, his hands slightly trembling from the intensity of the performance. But he felt proud, calm, and ready for whatever came next. He had faced the challenge, created something extraordinary, and earned the respect and awe of everyone in the room. He looked at his parents, who were smiling and clapping, their eyes full of pride and encouragement. They had believed in him, and now the world had seen what they already knew. The experience had been more than just a competition. It was a moment of growth, courage, and self-discovery. The little boy realized that facing impossible challenges was not just about winning or recognition. It was about proving to himself that he could rise to any occasion, no matter the odds. As the little boy finished his drawing, a hush fell over the room. The pencil he had held so carefully now rested on the table, still warm from hours of movement, and his hands, though trembling slightly from the intensity, held a quiet pride. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke, as if the entire world was waiting to see what would happen next. The judges leaned closer, peering at the sketch in disbelief, their eyes wide, their pens momentarily still. The audience sat, frozen, caught between disbelief and awe, unable to tear their eyes away from what had just been created. Then came the first gasp, a soft, almost involuntary sound that grew louder as realization spread across the room. People began to murmur, whispering to each other, struggling to find words for what they were seeing. The drawing was not only intricate and detailed, but it seemed to carry life, depth, and imagination beyond what anyone had expected from an 8-year-old. The shapes and colors combined in a way that told a story without a single word, and every line reflected hours of quiet practice, patience, and talent. The judges exchanged glances, their skepticism completely replaced by surprise. One leaned over and murmured to another, a word of astonishment escaping before being swallowed by quiet professionalism. Notes that had been filled with tentative marks of approval were now accompanied by underlined words and exclamation points. They had seen countless young participants in competitions over the years, but rarely had anyone created something so extraordinary, something that combined technical skill, creativity, and emotional depth all at once. The audience's reaction grew louder, a wave of excitement rolling through the room. Some children stared in wide-eyed wonder, unsure if they could ever hope to replicate what they had just witnessed. Adults clapped quietly at first, careful not to interrupt, and then the clapping grew louder, spreading through the room as if catching fire. People were cheering, their excitement and amazement breaking the tension that had held everyone in place. The impossible had been achieved, and it had come from a child no one had expected. The boy stood quietly, a small smile on his face, aware of the attention but not distracted by it. He felt a mixture of pride, relief, and amazement himself. He had worked so hard for this moment, and now the work had spoken for him. He remembered the hours spent practicing, the mistakes he had corrected, the lessons learned in silence. Every moment had led to this one, and he knew that he had shown something that would not be forgotten easily. Some of the older participants approached him, their faces a mix of admiration and surprise. They asked questions, trying to understand how someone his age could achieve so much in so little time. He answered simply, politely, without pride or arrogance. He did not feel the need to explain. The drawing itself had told the story. The awe of others was both thrilling and humbling, a reminder that the world often underestimates quiet determination and hard work, especially in someone so young. Back at the judges' table, discussion began. They talked quietly but urgently, their words full of excitement and disbelief. They were used to evaluating talent, but this went beyond talent. This was a performance of focus, courage, and vision. The boy had stunned them not just because of the quality of his work, but because of his ability to remain calm under pressure, to turn nervous energy into art, and to command attention without a single word. It was clear that this performance would be remembered long after the competition ended. The crowd had started to cheer again, louder this time, some rising from their seats to give him a standing ovation. Even the volunteers and organizers stopped for a moment, caught in the wave of admiration. People were taking photos, whispering to neighbors, pointing out the small boy who had done something impossible. They could not believe what they had seen, and neither could the boy himself. The applause filled the room, a sound so warm and overwhelming that he felt it in his chest, a tangible reminder that he had achieved something remarkable. He looked at his parents in the front row, their smiles bright and their eyes glistening with tears. They had always known he was special, but seeing the world acknowledge it was a moment of shared pride and joy. Their quiet support, their belief in him, had given him the courage to stand here and create something unforgettable. He felt gratitude and love in that instant, a mixture of emotions that made the applause even more meaningful. Some audience members approached the stage, drawn by curiosity and excitement. They wanted to see the drawing up close, to examine every detail, every line, and every curve. When they did, their amazement grew. They marveled at the precision, the creativity, and the depth of imagination that had gone into something created by such a small hand. Whispers of admiration turned into conversations about how rare such talent was, how courage and determination could produce extraordinary results, and how the boy had proven that age was not a limit for achievement. The boy, still standing quietly, felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. His mind replayed the hours of practice, the small mistakes that had become lessons, and the confidence that had grown quietly with every attempt. He had faced the challenge, transformed nervous energy into focus, and created something that left people speechless. The moment was not just about winning a competition. It was about showing the world what was possible when determination met talent. As the applause continued, he noticed the expressions on the faces of other children. Some were inspired, their eyes lighting up with a new understanding of what could be achieved with effort and focus. Others were surprised, unsure if they had ever imagined someone their age could accomplish so much. The atmosphere was filled with a sense of possibility, the kind of feeling that changes perspectives and motivates people to try harder, dream bigger, and believe in themselves. The judges finally spoke, one after another, their voices full of admiration and respect. They praised not just the technical skill, but the courage, the focus, and the vision that had made the drawing come alive. They acknowledged that what they had seen was extraordinary, that the little boy had defied expectations, and that he had left an unforgettable impression. Their words were not just praise. They were recognition of a young talent that would likely continue to grow and inspire. The little boy listened quietly, feeling the weight and warmth of their words. He had achieved something incredible, but he also knew that this was only one moment in a long journey. He had proven to himself that the impossible could be achieved, that hard work and courage mattered more than fear and doubt. The experience had taught him about focus, persistence, and the joy of creating something meaningful, lessons that would stay with him long after the applause faded. As the crowd continued to cheer, he felt a sense of connection with everyone in the room. The judges, the audience, the other participants, and his parents had all shared this moment with him. It was a reminder that achievements were not only about personal success but also about inspiring and touching the lives of others. The applause, the admiration, and the smiles were proof that courage and determination could leave a lasting impact. Finally, the noise began to settle, leaving behind a room filled with admiration and quiet conversations. The boy walked off the stage, his sketchpad carefully tucked under his arm. He felt proud, calm, and ready for whatever came next. He knew the road ahead would have challenges, but he also knew that he had proven something important, not just to the world but to himself. He had faced the impossible, stunned the judges, and left everyone in awe. And in that moment, he realized that this was only the beginning of a journey filled with possibilities, creativity, and the quiet power of belief in oneself. After the applause began to fade, the little boy returned to his seat, holding his sketchpad tightly. His heart was still pounding from the performance, but a warm glow of pride and happiness filled him. He looked around at the audience, at the faces of children and adults alike, and realized that he had truly surprised everyone. The impossible, the unbelievable, had been achieved, and he had done it with courage, focus, and determination. The judges gathered their notes and whispered among themselves. When they were ready, they began to speak, one after another, praising the child's extraordinary talent. They spoke not only about the technical skill displayed but also about the creativity, imagination, and confidence that shone through every line of the drawing. Their words carried weight, and it was clear that they were genuinely impressed. The boy listened quietly, his small smile growing as he understood that what he had done was being recognized by some of the most experienced people in the field. When the announcement came, it was met with excitement and joy. The boy's name was called as the winner of the competition. The room erupted into cheers, and parents, friends, and other participants clapped enthusiastically. He felt a mixture of disbelief and joy, unable to comprehend fully that he had actually won. He had worked hard, yes, but he had never imagined that the results would be so extraordinary. The recognition was overwhelming, but it was also deeply satisfying, a reward for the hours of dedication, practice, and courage. He walked onto the stage again to receive his prize. The judges shook his hand, smiling warmly, their admiration clear. He accepted the certificate and the small trophy with a sense of humility and pride. His parents were standing in the audience, tears of joy in their eyes, clapping louder than anyone else. They had always believed in him, encouraged him quietly, and now they shared in his triumph. The boy waved at them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for their support and love. Other children approached him, some shyly, others boldly, asking about his techniques and how he had prepared. He answered politely, explaining simply that he had practiced a lot, learned from mistakes, and focused on enjoying the process. He did not boast. He simply shared the truth that effort and patience could lead to remarkable results. His words were honest and sincere, and many of the other children seemed inspired, realizing that with dedication, they too could achieve something extraordinary. The rest of the day passed in a blur of congratulations, photographs, and interviews. People wanted to know more about the young boy who had stunned everyone with his talent. Journalists asked questions, fellow participants praised his skill, and audience members came up to compliment him. Each interaction was humbling and inspiring, reinforcing the lesson that true talent shines not only in ability, but also in humility and focus. He felt proud, but also grounded, knowing that this was only the beginning of his journey. Back at home, the little boy unpacked his materials carefully, setting his pencils and sketchpad in their usual places. He reflected on the day, thinking about how far he had come from the quiet practice sessions in his room to the stage filled with people who had once thought it was impossible. He realized that the recognition was not just about winning. It was about proving to himself that determination, courage, and focus could overcome doubt and fear. The lessons he had learned would stay with him forever, guiding him in everything he chose to do. His parents sat with him, talking quietly about the day. They reminded him that the trophy and certificate were symbols of achievement, but the real victory was in the experience itself. The courage to face the challenge, the dedication to prepare, and the focus to perform under pressure. They praised him not only for his talent but also for the humility, patience, and resilience he had shown. The boy listened, absorbing their words, understanding that true success was about more than recognition. It was about growth, learning, and sharing what he loved with the world. The next few days were filled with congratulations and excitement. Friends at school wanted to hear about the competition, teachers praised his achievement, and neighbors stopped by to celebrate. But the boy remained humble, quietly enjoying the attention while continuing to focus on his art. He realized that talent alone was not enough. It was the combination of practice, patience, courage, and love for what he did that had brought him this far. The experience had taught him that challenges could be overcome, that disbelief could be transformed into admiration, and that the impossible could be made real through determination. He returned to his drawings, not with pressure to win again, but with joy and curiosity. Every new sketch was an opportunity to explore, to create, and to express himself. He experimented with new techniques, colors, and shapes, always remembering the lessons from the competition. Each line he drew was filled with confidence, experience, and the knowledge that he could achieve what once seemed impossible. His art became more than a hobby. It became a way to communicate, inspire, and grow. Over time, the story of the 8-year-old who stunned the judges spread. People spoke of his courage, talent, and determination. He became an example for others, showing that age, size, or doubt did not limit what could be achieved. Children were inspired to pursue their passions, and adults were reminded of the power of patience, focus, and encouragement. The boy understood that his experience was a story of more than just winning. It was about inspiring others, sharing what he loved, and proving that belief in oneself could create extraordinary outcomes. The boy continued to practice, learn, and explore new ideas. Each day brought a new challenge, a new opportunity to grow. He remembered the applause, the amazement, and the pride, but he also remembered the quiet lessons, the patience, the focus, and the courage it took to stand on that stage. He knew that every achievement was a step on a journey, and that the true measure of success was not just recognition, but the growth and joy that came from doing what he loved. Years later, he would look back on that competition not only as a moment of victory but as a turning point in his life. It was the moment he learned that the impossible could be made real, that dedication and courage mattered more than age or doubt, and that belief in oneself could inspire others. The lessons of that day stayed with him, guiding every choice, every effort, and every creation. He realized that talent was a gift, but determination, humility, and passion were what transformed a gift into something truly extraordinary. In the end, the 8-year-old boy who stunned the judges became more than a winner. He became a symbol of hope, courage, and inspiration. The story of his achievement was told and retold, inspiring countless others to pursue their dreams, face challenges bravely and believe in themselves, no matter how impossible a task might seem. His journey showed that with hard work, focus, and a love for what you do, the unbelievable could become real, leaving a lasting impact on the world around you.